Welcome to the big show. Today we're going to be talking about the dealership business model, and this is video episode 1 of a 3-part series. And we're just going to talk about the model, how we misunderstand the business that we're actually in and how it functions and where the leverage is. I'm Chris Collins. This is Christian.
Hello, everyone.
And Hoagie.
Hello.
And that and not much more is coming up right now on Service Drive Revolution. We have a jealousy issue.
It's a problem.
Does your wife ever get jealous?
No.
Never?
No. She's solid in that way. Doesn't get jealous.
I've got a jealousy problem at my house, but not as bad as the one at the office. The one at the office is almost insane. We should probably tell everybody what we're talking about. So we had a visitor the other day in the office. Alex, our office manager, got a rescue dog. Her name's Apple. And what Alex...
She's a little bully.
Just
little pit bull.
Just a little adorable dog. And what Alex doesn't know is that Chris Collins' DNA style is like 34 to 38% canine. And what happens is that, and this isn't an isolated incident, I promise. Chris can probably talk more about it. But immediately upon meeting Chris, Apple became Chris's dog. And
well, just follows me around, not my dog. Just follows me around. We have a connection. We understand each other.
Yeah. I believe that now when Apple comes into the office, it sits in front of Chris's office pining at the door. But yeah, it's not his dog anymore. But
most dogs like, there is something in my DNA that dogs like me, and especially the bully breeds. Like the breeds that people are the most afraid of usually are the ones that are like, hey dude, let's hang out. I like you. Like even on the street, like
I can think of no less than like 5 or 6 times when we've been in airports.
And dogs will try to go to me.
Yeah,
like they will try to come to. It's funny. Like it catches me off guard sometimes.
Yeah,
too.
but I've witnessed this
like,
for
I
a
want
long
that
time.
dude. I want to hang out with that guy.
But Alex wasn't ready for this, so she starts to.
Yeah,
I mean,
she got a little jealous.
It's not a it's not a jealous rage. Like she threw stuff, but
she did.
No. That was just dramatic.
I know a couple times Apple followed me to my office and. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
but,
and just the sad look on her face. I felt bad for her, but she just
But the good news
understand.
is the dog feels comfortable around here.
Yeah.
Like we need a dog around here.
Yeah.
God knows my dogs don't come into work anymore. Entitled.
They don't want
They're in West Hollywood.
They don't want to.
They
don't want to slum it in downtown.
Yeah, like downtown.
But Apple's amazing. She's a wonderful addition to the team. So we like it.
She's
But
such a sweetheart.
Yeah.
So sweet.
That dog loves you in a good way.
I love dogs.
That reminds me. So a priest, a minister, and a rabbit all walk into a bar.
A priest, a minister, and a rabbit.
Yep. And the rabbit says, I think I'm a typo.
Okay.
Got it now. Took me a second, but
Okay.
I got it.
You want to explain it?
It's what I thought you said in the beginning.
Yes.
So a rabbi instead of a rabbit. Right? Did I get that right?
You did.
I landed it? Okay.
We're going to put this in Awkward Moments on SDR. Part
You like it.
47. I do.
You like it when it's awkward. We just, the reason why we have the illustrious Hoagie here is that he was doing the masterclass, the kind of new client boot camp, and Christian started that thing out with a couple jokes, and it landed on half the room.
Yeah, but not the whole room for sure.
It's great though.
And you did
It's
two
so
back
great.
to back.
Yeah. It was funny because the opener I thought was funny. And it fell flat.
I was trying to think like maybe the joke should be car related.
It might make more sense, I suppose.
Or like employee HR related or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something.
Yeah, maybe.
Because also, you know, they're here, they're in this place, they're like it's a new experience. They're wondering what's about to happen. They very quickly, when they get here, get the sense that it's way different than what they thought it was going to be. Like it's an elevated experience. Yeah. And then you're coming in with that, like,
okay. So note to self, theme the jokes. It's all about their comfort. Yes.
Well, I mean, maybe a joke about LA and the homeless, or, well, I don't know, something.
Oh yeah.
Something more topical to their experience.
Yeah, my setup on one started to lean down that, but I could have gone way further. Okay. Yeah, point taken. I like it. I don't know how I'd make a joke about LA.
Just say that.
That should have been. That was it.
That was it.
You got it.
I kind of did at the beginning when I was saying this experiment. It's gone awry. I forget what the context was when I said that. I was like, this experiment that's gone awry.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about the dealership business model, and it's a 3-part series. We kind of outlined this for you. The very first one, so what we're going to talk about today is the overarching like business model of a car dealership. And I think a lot of times we think about this in a way that is counterintuitive to us being successful, in the sense that we're not thinking about where the leverage is in the business. We're applying our effort and pressure in places where there is no leverage because we really have no control. And so if we just think about dealerships, the dealership model is not a model where there is an entrepreneur, like a dealer, that goes out and designs a car and has a car manufactured. That isn't the model. Nobody is creating anything. Like there's nothing created. You're a franchisee. So it's no different than if you own a McDonald's or a Pizza Hut. You're serving McDonald's food, and you're buying the food from McDonald's, and you're doing it McDonald's way. And so in trucking and automotive and power sports, they're all the same. You are picking a franchise. So you do pick the franchise, and some people are better at picking franchises than others. Some people are settling on a franchise because that's what they can pull off or they can afford. I mean, I remember when I was younger in this business, like there literally is a client that couldn't get Alfa Romeo and had to settle on BMW.
Huh.
Like that literally would have, I know quite a few dealers that were very, very heavily invested in Saab and in Saturn. And so you're picking the horse that you're going to ride, but you are not designing anything. There is zero creativity involved in what we're doing as dealers. We're franchisees. And I think that's lost a lot of times. And part of the reason why a lot of dealers they're entrepreneurs, but they're not leaders in a sense. They're managing a process that's being handed to them, and it can make them an entrepreneur because they're a business owner, but they're not a leader. They're not at the forefront of anything. They're really just taking something that they're handed and trying to do their best with what has already been designed for them. And that's part of what we want to talk about today, is because there's leverage that's missed in that, especially because, I mean, how many dealers do we know that just kind of do what the factory does? And the factory's really good. A lot of the manufacturers are really good at controlling the outcome, right? Like you can't have your own website. You're using their website vendor. You're using their marketing companies. You're using their architects. I mean, they are controlling most of what you do. In a lot of situations, they're even controlling the flooring, the colors, the lifts you put in,
furniture.
And so that's where people put a lot of their effort. But in a sense, that's not where the leverage is. That's what you're handed. And it is a reason why the public companies do really well, is because they're running franchises. They run them like franchises. They're not trying to run them like unique businesses. It's not, I mean, how many times is an HR department for a publicly traded automotive group hiring managers from a Best Buy to run a car dealership? The reason why they're doing, or Home Depots, they do Home Depots a lot too. The reason why they're doing that is because to them, it's just a franchise. They're just a bunch of different brands and they have a franchise and they're following the franchise model. They're going to build the building they want and they're going to depend on the quality of the vehicle that they are given and basically the marketing in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then if we talk about where the real leverage is in this franchise model, we're already getting the product. We're not developing the product. We have very little input, if any, on products. I when I was running a dealership, I was on a council that was a development council. Like, you know, could you put cup holders in the cars? Like literally that. And to the degree that we affected the manufacturing process, it wasn't worth showing up to those meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Like the engineers were there, they listened, but the whole time, it really felt more like they were trying to say, well, we included you, not, well, we took your advice, especially for a German or a Japanese company. It's very slow to adapt to the culture of where they're selling the cars. They're better today than they have ever been, but it's still slow. It's still very slow. And so if we think about the leverage, where we should spend most of our time, and if we accept the fact that we're a franchise, we're not creating a business, then the first one is on relationships. And so, you know, the model was that there was a car dealer in every market for every brand, and they were a part of the Chamber of Commerce. They sponsored the local high school. They were seeing their clients at the grocery store. It was a relationship-based business, and it wasn't just sales. It was a relationship-based business as far as it wasn't as siloed as far as, well, you're a sales customer, you're a service customer. It was, you are our customer. And I think we're coming back to that as an industry. We're coming back to seeing customers as one thing and retention as something that involves every department, not just one department and kind of leaving it to chance. And so the relationships that you have with your customers and with your local market, with the local media, with local businesses, all of that plays into that and is where the leverage is, more or less. Then the second part of that is a cousin to the first one, which is relationships, is the experience. You have a lot of autonomy to create an experience in a dealership, even to the point where many times dealers, when they're building a new building, have got us involved in the process, and where you put the waiting room, how you design the drive, all of that is kind of up for negotiation as long as your plan makes sense and, you know, you just do it soon enough and you get the, you know, the architect's approval or get the manufacturer to sign off. But I've never had them not sign off. I've also never had them come back and go, why did you do it that way? Like they kind of design them as a you know, a stamp. They're just stamping them out. Where we put the waiting room, how we design the service drives is very, very antiquated. Very antiquated. There's no reason to have the waiting room by the service department if you're in the new car business or used car business. You should have them walk through your vehicles on the showroom floor. And you should have it spread out, not, you know, one guy holding a remote in a waiting room and everybody's watching Fox News or everybody's watching ESPN is not a customer experience. That's something that they're enduring because they have to.
Yeah, I was going to say it's more like that's torture.
Yeah.
That whole thing.
But if you spread them out and you get rid of the big TV and you get them to walk through the showroom and there's places for them to hang out, you're going to sell more cars and you're going to have a better relationship in that way. How we design the service drive, same sort of thing, is very counterintuitive. And those are places where you have leverage. You have leverage in the experience. You have leverage in how you answer the phone. You have leverage in how people are handled and greeted, just all of it. You have leverage in that part of it, which I think is the part that they leave to chance,
Right.
to the franchise architect.
Yeah.
Then the third one I had was systems. The manufacturers try to influence your systems, but the systems that they are trying to influence you to have are not based in retail experience. Most of the time it's based in some sort of delusional, idealized version of how things would work, but it's not based in real retail experience, trying to create something that the customer not only enjoys themselves, but they want to come back. That's completely different. And oftentimes your systems are related to your profitability more than anything else. And they don't care if you have 2 technicians in a stall. They don't care how the flow of the work, how inefficient it is. They might care, but they aren't providing guidance in that way.
Yeah. 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 I think one thing, with the manufacturer too, at some point in time, you have this, with this conversation, you come back to the fact with the manufacturers that they're selling cars and parts, right? And so that brings up a bigger conversation with service. And so they're very good at controlling the outcome, like you said. And in designing your system and taking advice from the manufacturer and kind of that whole thing, one thing we see a lot is they want to control the outcome, but so often they want to treat the symptom instead of the problem, right? So
Nissan's a great example of that.
Yes. Yeah. So the Nissan survey, there's a thing on there to
Their CSI survey.
Yeah, their CSI survey are were you greeted with a tablet or something like that?
Yeah.
And it's funny because they really don't care that you use a tablet, but they've gotten a ton of feedback on their surveys that people are waiting in the drive and not getting greeted. Like the problem they're trying to solve with asking customers if they got greeted with a tablet is they want the service advisor to not leave the customer waiting in the drive for 10 minutes. Yeah.
It's a great idea, but there's other ways to achieve it.
There's a better system for it.
Like the system we put in place forces that.
Sure.
It's not even an option, and you don't need a tablet.
Sure.
Like it's not even an option. Yeah. Through our travels, I've spoken at many events with manufacturers where the question of how they design the quick lube and all that comes up, and the quick lube isn't profitable. And I've offered manufacturers, like I have had, one that I recall is Ford. Like the Ford executives were there, and they came up to me after, and I said, "Hey, call me. I can explain to you how this can work for you and for the dealer." Never called. But they force this quick lube thing on them that doesn't, the thing they're trying to accomplish is they're trying to get customers through quickly. But there's a way to do that and accomplish being profitable and having a better customer experience. Having the most customers handled by the least talented advisors that are fit, to keep a quick lube advisor, sometimes it's like 50% of the gross you have to pay them. They're not creating anything out of it. It's a lesson in deduction.
Yeah.
In the end is what happens. The better you do, the worse you do.
Right.
You know what the whole thing kind of reminds me of when the manufacturer does a decree? It's kind of like Google Translate, right? And no, this isn't a joke. Like this is serious as a heart attack. But it's like you put the information into Google Translate and it gives you the Spanish version or like whatever it is, but it's not the real Spanish version, right? Like, so sometimes I'll do that Google Translate thing with my fiance and I'll be like, is this right? She's like, well, it's kind of right, but it's not really how the people talk. And I always think that the manufacturer, they do the Google Translate version. And it's like their thought is, well, the customer says that we take too long. And like, well, what if we had multiple people working on the thing? Like Google Translate would say that that's what you would do is you'd have two people working on the car. They like, I don't know, it's like a target that they just constantly miss to the right or something like that. But it's super interesting how consistently off it is.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a manufacturer program hit it on the head. And now, Hoagie was actually, I got to listen in on his master class and he's almost making a joke. He's like, the advisors have to open up like 25 different software programs just to write one RO. And those all come down from like manufacturer decrees and everything like that. It's like, oh, you got to have this latest and greatest thing. Their goal, of course, is that they want a good customer. Well, they want to sell more cars, like to your point. But it's so crazy how it's like they regularly always miss to the right. Like it's always just off.
Yeah, software is a great example of that, right? Like there's so many softwares that promise all these different outcomes, right? And all these different metrics. And the truth of the matter is
it's like American politics. It's like they promise it when they're running for office, but nobody ever goes back and checks except for us. Like how many times do we put something in place and the hours per hour or the numbers, the CSI goes down and nobody makes that connection that disruption in the system or the process is causing that because you're just with a lot of things, you're trying to automate something that should be human.
Yeah, like you hear that term garbage in, garbage out a lot, right? And software and we get those questions a lot like do you like tablets? Do you like this multi-point inspection system? Do you like all that stuff? And and a lot of those we're not for or against. But the truth of the matter is if you don't have a good system and process before that, it's just irrelevant. Like it's not going to do anything. And if you try to automate something that is garbage anyway, like you're not going to have a good outcome. In fact, it's probably going to get worse, like you're saying. And then in talking about systems and this whole conversation also, when they try to go make something better, instead of building a system and treating the problem, they end up throwing people at it. And that's another thing I'm seeing a lot of out there right now in regards to systems is they throw people at it. And so you end up with 4 service advisors and 7 managers.
And one head of client emotional.
That's what I have for number 4 is people. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Like they get the people part wrong and they have people as band-aids instead of training and having the right people in the right place. And I think a lot of times that's just an outcome of a bad system because the system should pick up those inconsistencies in the feedback loop.
Yep.
But instead they're throwing people at it because they don't have a system and the system they're running is antiquated. It doesn't function anymore. But we're forcing it to function with all our heart and mind and soul,
Yeah.
Number 4 is people. Number 5 is culture. So what is interesting and what we get to see a lot is that in a world where most people are middle managers, they're not leaders, the culture is very much about being validated and pleased by the manager. So we want everybody to like us. We want everybody to be okay. And we don't have the wherewithal to understand that we have to go out and recruit the right people and hold people to a certain standard. Culture is about having a certain standard that is met. It's not about making people happy that don't want to be happy. And so, managers spend a lot of time fixing somebody who doesn't want to fixing somebody who isn't meant for that position. And it results in mediocrity and underperformance across the board. Like we probably see that more than anything else is just what is acceptable is nuts.
Yeah.
Like the warm body with no passion for the business or for the customers. The amount of effort we put into recruiting and training new people is the outcome that we're getting. It is the result that we're getting.
Well, the funny thing too is that that you hired the right person if you don't if you almost feel bad because they just do the thing without you having to do any like this, that, and the other thing. I think if there's a failure, one big failure I have had in my career is I always spend too much time at the bottom. Like you're trying to,
Yeah, you want it more than somebody else wants it.
yeah, and then like I
Then
don't,
as soon as you let them go, you're like, oh God, why did it take so long?
yeah, and it frees you up to do all the right things you were
Yeah.
supposed to do in the first place. Like that's, I think you said that to me. I remember almost jokingly one day. It was like, when's the last time you ever made someone else happy? And we're talking about that instead of culture.
Yeah. And like, so just coming out of the master class that we had, every one of those groups from a dealership or a dealership group, in order to hit the numbers that they're going to hit, they're going to have to add technicians. And one of the things that is lacking in our industry is one, understanding how to recruit technicians. We delegate it to an HR department that just follows what everybody else is doing, but also goes back to culture, the standard of what we expect. In most dealerships, because the technicians have so much leverage, you're accepting whatever it is they want to give as your reality instead of going out and finding the right people and understanding that technicians are like salespeople in a sense. They're paid a percentage of what is created. And so the customer is paying for them. So, I mean, I would much rather have a shop full of technicians making $50 an hour that were proactive, fun to work with, loved what they were doing, than a bunch of miserable, low energy, low status at 20. And we just get caught up in this thing where we're not designing it for an outcome. We're accepting a reality that we assume. It isn't even real. We're just assuming it because everybody else around us is doing the same thing they've always done. But one of the things that will happen from yesterday and today is they will add technicians and they will start to build a culture that is what it kind of, in a sense, used to be in a lot of places. That over the last like 5 years, for sure, it's definitely gone the other way. Like where people are like, "Oh yeah, he's a terrible tech, but we can't lose him."
Yeah,
and he comes in whenever he wants and does, and you're like, "What?"
Yeah, it's funny because everybody has the story too of, we have this guy in the shop or their top producing advisor or whatever.
That always starts off with, so tell me what you would do.
Yeah. And, and he finally leaves or we finally decide to fire him. And, and then we have a record month the next month and they're like, just like you said, why didn't we do that sooner? But it is an interesting thing and it paints a picture for what culture is. Because, you have these high performers and you think that's just the world that you live in now. And so you lower your standards on what is acceptable from that person. And it just starts you in this downward spiral. And, and you fall into the trap of, I can't hire techs and, and it's just this downward spiral. But it's an interesting thing. That was one of the things too, during COVID, that I started to just blow me away right away was when people had to pick, 25% of their staff or 30% of their staff or 40% of their staff. When you go start handpicking who's going to come to work with you that day, really what you're voting on is who you want to go to battle with, and it's who represents your culture.
Yeah,
like who's meeting the standards that you want. And then when they were able to do that, people were having record months with like 30% of their staff. It was very telling.
Yeah. The other thing too is, how many clients have we had come in, or dealer groups too, that spend all this money on recruiting new young kids into our industry, into the shop, and then they're the ones asking the question, what would you do if there's this guy and he's kind of a bully? And you're like, that's the example you're letting exist for these new kids coming in. No reason. There's a reason why they're leaving.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to build something from the bottom if the top is not functioning.
Right.
It has to function. The top has to be the example. It has to be the culture.
Mm-hmm.
The last one after culture I have is training. Like the thing that happens, and we kind of start off the masterclass with this because it has surprised us for a long time. And, you know, the three of us here have talked about this many times, almost like it's like a dream in a sense, is service managers have the least amount of effective training. I don't think there's any industry I've never ran into anything like it, where they're running these businesses that are millions of dollars and they have no understanding of how you make a profit. They are told to produce gross. 50% of the time they don't understand what that is. And we have these really hardworking, you know, good people that don't have a map to success. And whenever we do something with manufacturers, it always is, you know, sad how if they have 2,200 dealerships and we set up training for 2,200 managers, we're really going to train 3,500. Like the turnover is over 50%, and we won't even be halfway through the year. And they will be going, can you add classes? Because the managers never have a chance. Like, you know, they come out of here, they learn where the leverage is, what the financial statement means and how it works, how you affect it and make profit. And most of the time, the call that we get is, we need more traffic or we need advisor training. And we don't want to disagree with anybody and say, no, we don't want to give you advisor training, because we have advisor training and we believe in advisor training, but it's the fifth player on the bus. Like the first player on the bus is to have a deep understanding of how it works and what we're trying to do. Because then, you know, very soon after that is the systems, and the systems are the best trainers of advisors than anything. Like the process and how you design it will not only make the advisors' jobs easier, it will tee them up to do the job they're meant to do with a lot of clarity, where we have them confused and doing a bunch of things, you know, and shorthanded. Like we think that we can always run it shorthanded, and then we wonder why we're not growing at the rate we should be. And so the training part is a big part of that. And it, you know, it always makes me a little sad when I run into somebody who's been doing this for 20 years and they're like, this is the first time anybody's explained this to me. And you're like, I know.
Yeah.
Like, we had a lot of that the last 2 days. A lot of people that have been in a long time. They're like, thank goodness, because, and even people that went to like the NADA and the NCM stuff, and like, they're like, I never knew it could be, you know, this clear. And it's it's an absolute freaking tragedy. It
is interesting in a world where we're designing our relationship with our clients more like a partnership and for an outcome that is the outcome we would want if we were them. How even in that they're trying to revert back to the old way of training, where you just, well, we're going to train them. And it's like, okay, like, so what, the sales go up for a month? Like, what are we trying to build something, or like, are we trying to train them, you know? And it's interesting how we're conditioned to train sometimes, but we're not conditioned that the training should have an outcome, right? Like we experienced this recently with somebody who did sales training for us. And it's like, he did his sales training and it's cute and all, but I'm not looking for sales training. I'm looking to increase sales. And it's a different thing. If you're trying to train and it has the label of sales training, that isn't as effective as increasing your sales. Like, to increase our sales, you have to understand our client, the market we're in, what it is we're providing. It isn't a one size fits all. And that's what always bothers me about training. And why we're having the success that we're having is we're designing it for an outcome, which is two things: profitability and the customer experience. If those two things are constantly improving, you are at the forefront of this. And that is where the leverage is in a franchise model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, it isn't design, it isn't engineering. Like, a lot of businesses that I work with, and they're manufacturing something. That's a different business. Completely different.
Yeah. When you're in it too, when it's you, this is something that's been coming up a lot lately, with different coaches, myself and with clients, is, that old saying you say a lot: you can't read the label of the pickle jar you're in. Right. And it's funny because, and this happens to me in my own life as well, but the managers will be talking about, hey, I need some advisor training or whatever, something along those lines, or, hey, we're not good in this area. We're not good at, and the example I've been using a lot that's been coming up is we're not good at communication and organization. And they'll say, we got to work with the advisors on this. I need some help working with the advisors on this. And we go into the service manager's office and it looks like a tornado hit a paper factory. Right. And in my own life, the example of that is my youngest daughter. Sometimes I'm like what is, like my youngest daughter loves to ride her bike, and she will ride her bike through the pasture. Like, she's going to have the strongest legs of any kid I have ever seen. And I'm like, what is wrong with her? Like, where does she get that from? And my wife's like, really? She gets it from you. Like, her mannerisms, like the things she does like that, the way her mind works, it's just a reflection of me. And so, it's hard to be self-aware of that thing. But if the outcome in your department isn't happening, the first place you have to look is at the top. It's at the leader. And
culture, everything starts at the top.
Yeah. Yeah. And usually if we're not good at this thing, there's usually a reflection of that at the top. And then when you go to start to correct that thing, treating the problem and not the symptom, putting a system to it, and helping the people learn the system. I think where the training becomes valuable and is traction and scalable is if the training is how to execute the system. Like, the training so often is reactionary, and if it increases the outcome or the results, like you said, at best it's inconsistent. It's good for a month. Like, and that's a tough thing. And then there's the realization that to do that and execute on it, whether it's software, whatever magic pill you want to buy, it doesn't exist. Like, there's a thing that you got to roll up your sleeves and get to work. It's funny, like, it is, sometimes it's easier to see from the outside looking in. When you're in it, some of this stuff is hard to see. And I think that's where a coach is most valuable.
When we say you can't read the label of the jar you're in, we're very aware that we all do it.
Right. Right.
It's not an indictment. It's hey, just remember that this is happening to all of us, because it happens to me, everybody. Yep. But it's very true. So that's number one, is just understanding the business model, and that the leverage isn't in the manufacturing of the product. We're getting the product, whatever it is, good or bad, we're getting it. The leverage is in the relationships, the customer experience that we create, the systems, the people, the culture, and the training. And it's very middle manager heavy. Like, it's very much about processes and holding people accountable to those processes, but that's the leverage more than anything else. So we'll see you here coming up real soon for part 2 on Service Drive Revolution. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Service Drive Revolution. We're uploading new stuff every day, so make sure you subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out. If you have a question you'd like us to answer on the show, call 8333-ASK-SDR and we'll answer your question on the show. That's 8333-ASK-SDR. For special deals on our books and training, head over to offers.chriscollinsinc.com. Now that's offers.chriscollinsinc.com. I'm Chris Collins, and I'll see you in the next video.